A lost, unfinished episode of Tom and Jerry reveals a horrifying shift in the cartoon's dynamic. Tom's obsession with catching Jerry escalates into a chilling, surreal pursuit, blurring the lines between cartoon violence and a disturbing reality, where the characters become aware of their endless, cyclical torment. The film reel was unlabeled, found tucked away in a forgotten corner of the MGM archives. It was marked only with a series of cryptic symbols and the words T and J, do not screen. Naturally, curiosity won out. The animation was rough, unfinished, clearly a test reel or a discarded concept. It started like any other Tom and Jerry cartoon. Tom, eyes narrowed in predatory focus, was setting an elaborate trap for Jerry, involving a comically oversized mousetrap, a length of string, and a precariously balanced anvil. But something was off. The colors were muted, almost sickly. The usual vibrant hues replaced with washed-out grays and browns. The music, usually a jaunty, upbeat score, was a discordant jumble of notes, a warped, unsettling melody that seemed to crawl under your skin. And Tom, he wasn't the same. His usual cartoonish expressions of frustration and anger were replaced by something far more disturbing. His eyes, usually wide and expressive, were narrowed to slits, filled with a cold, calculating malice. His grin was wider, sharper, revealing rows of needle-like teeth that were far too realistic for a cartoon cat. The chase began, but it wasn't the usual slapstick mayhem. It was slower, more deliberate, more menacing. Tom moved with an unnatural grace, his movements fluid and predatory, his shadow stretching and distorting on the walls, taking on a life of its own. Jerry, too, was different. He was no longer the mischievous, quick-witted mouse. He was terrified, his eyes wide with a primal fear, his movements frantic, desperate. He wasn't trying to outsmart Tom, he was trying to survive. The usual cartoon physics were inconsistent. Sometimes Tom would be flattened by a falling object, only to spring back to his feet moments later. His body momentarily distorted, his bones visible beneath his fur. Other times, the violence was disturbingly realistic. A blow from a hammer left a visible bruise. A fall from a height resulted in a sickening crack. As the cartoon progressed, the background began to change. The familiar house setting became increasingly surreal, the walls shifting and melting, the furniture contorting into grotesque shapes. The world around Tom and Jerry was breaking down, becoming a nightmarish reflection of their endless, cyclical conflict. Then, the most disturbing element began to emerge: awareness. Tom, in a moment of unprecedented clarity, stopped chasing Jerry. He looked directly at the camera, his eyes filled with a chilling mix of rage and despair. He spoke, his voice a distorted, guttural growl, unlike anything ever heard in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. "Why?" he rasped, his voice cracking with emotion. "Why can't I catch him? Why does it always reset?" Jerry, cowering in a corner, looked at Tom with a mixture of fear and understanding. He, too, seemed to be aware of the endless loop, of the futility of their conflict. He whimpered, a sound that was heartbreakingly human. The cartoon descended into a surreal, nightmarish sequence. Tom, driven mad by his awareness, began to tear at the very fabric of his reality, ripping holes in the background, revealing a black, void-like space beyond. He was trying to escape, to break free from the endless cycle of violence, but his efforts only served to further destabilize the cartoon world. Jerry, in a desperate attempt to survive, started to fight back, not with his usual tricks and traps, but with a raw, animalistic ferocity. He bit, he scratched, he clawed, his tiny body fueled by a desperate will to live. The violence escalated, becoming increasingly graphic, increasingly disturbing. It was no longer cartoonish, it was brutal, visceral, horrifying. It was a reflection of their shared torment, of their endless, inescapable suffering. The final scene of the unfinished episode depicted Tom and Jerry, both battered, broken, and bleeding, locked in a desperate embrace. They were no longer cat and mouse, predator and prey. They were two souls, trapped in an endless cycle of violence, their identities blurring, their sanity unraveling. They looked directly at the camera, their eyes filled with a shared understanding, a shared despair. And then they spoke, their voices merging into a single, chilling whisper. "It never ends," they said in unison, their voices a distorted echo of their former selves. "It just repeats." The screen abruptly cut to black. The film reel ended. Those who watched the tape were deeply disturbed, shaken to their core. They couldn't explain what they had seen, what they had felt. It was more than just a cartoon. It was a glimpse into a horrifying reality, a window into a world of endless torment. The tape was locked away again, deemed too disturbing for public viewing. But the images, the whispers, the chilling awareness of Tom and Jerry lingered in the minds of those who had seen it. The legend of the final frame spread through the animation community, a whispered warning about the dangers of pushing boundaries, of blurring the lines between reality and fiction, of the potential for darkness that lurks within even the most innocent of creations. It was a reminder that some stories are best left untold, some doors are best left unopened, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones we create, but the ones we become. The cartoon was never finished, but the cycle continues. They are still trapped, still fighting, still aware, and the final frame is always waiting.